Good day. Thank you for joining me for discussing a concept called job costing, and that also flows into process costing, as you would know, looking at our curriculum. So, job costing, what would that mean? We have a total production facility, and we're producing, and we know exactly what we're doing in terms of the total production facility, but what is a specific job costing me? Now, I want to know that, because if I need to price a job, I need to know that I'm actually making a profit on that specific job. So there's multiple ways for us to use this information, mainly planning, because you don't know if you're going to make a profit unless you know exactly what it's actually costing you to make that specific product or to do that specific job. This is not only for production, it could also be for consulting jobs or in the service sector. So this is a concept that can be used broadly in our environment today in any business that you get. Obviously, when you are making multiple, like oil refinery would be using process costing, because it wouldn't be per job, it would be for the whole process that you need to cost it. So you need to be able to see when am I going to use job costing and actually when am I going to use process costing to give me the most reasonable information. So we move on to our slides. Basic terminology, just catching up on your basic terms. Several key points from prior chapters. So, cost objects, what can that include? Responsibility centers, departments, customers, products. So it could be different things. Direct cost and tracing, usually that is materials and labor. As we did it before, nothing new. And then we've got our indirect costs and allocation, which we call the overhead. Logically, this goes to a cost pool, any logical grouping of related cost objects. Cost allocation base, a cost driver is used as a basis upon which to build a systematic method of distributing indirect costs. For example, let's say that direct labor hours cause indirect costs to change. Accordingly, direct labor hours will be used to distribute or allocate costs among objects based on their usage of that cost driver. This should be all very familiar to you, as we've been discussing this through this subject. Job costing, systems accounting for distinct cost objects called jobs. Each job may be different from the next and consumes different resources. Now, they give examples: wedding announcements, aircraft, and advertising. A little lesson that I've picked up in previous evaluations from students: please take note that the cost of the whole facility, call it a facility, call it production facility, call it a plant, call it a factory, there could be different names for it. There is a total cost pool. If I would ask you in a question to actually cost a specific job, that means that you cannot allocate the total cost of the factory or the plant to that specific job. That is one job of many. So always remain in perspective about a question, because you are faced with a plant, a factory, a total amount of costs. So obviously out of that information, you actually need to get an allocation base and then get a rate, and then that rate can actually be applied to the specific job. But this job does not make out the whole factory. It's one of numerous different jobs. So typically, if you get that kind of information, always keep your hat on. You need to know that it's the whole plant's information, get your allocation basis, and then only can you allocate to the job. Just as a tip for the future. Let's carry on. Process costing, system accounting for mass production of identical or similar products. So this could be a typical question to you. What would be applied to different types of product? Costing systems illustrated, job costing used. You can see there in the service sector, merchandising and manufacturing. As I said to you, this is not limited to only one sector and can be applied across the board. So you can have a look at those different examples. Now, costing approaches. Now, this will be clearly stipulated if you are given a case study. Actual costing allocates indirect cost based on the actual indirect cost rate times the actual activity consumption. Quite important. So it's not the budgeted, it's the actual, because normal costing, and why is this called normal costing? You need to think about that a little bit. Normal costing, do we know what the actual costs are going to be? in financial accounting, you'll know, even after month end, you're still not sure what the actual total cost has to be, because you still need to make provisions, you still have expenses coming through, you never get your expenses all on time, so you still have to do a lot of work to get to the actual cost. So by the time you have the actual cost, you're actually a little bit too late to do a lot of planning. So that's why often we have to use the normal costing system, because then we use a budgeted indirect cost rate. So we have to make an estimation what amount of hours or what amount of money we're going to spend, and we need to find an allocation base and then use an estimated rate, which obviously